You're listening to Data Center Therapy. Please take a number, and an engineer will be right with you.
Hey, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or whatever you're listening to this.
Hello.
Welcome back to, Data Center Therapy, starring the Matts. Yeah, I am Matt Yette. I'm with my co-host, Matt Cozzolino. Matt, how are you this morning?
It's going to be one of those days, is it?
I guess. I mean, here we are. We've been chatting for about 20 minutes now, and it's kind of like, you know what? We should have just hit record at the beginning of this.
Record button, yeah.
Because I feel like we've had an episode already of conversation, and and it's good stuff. It's good stuff. We haven't been screaming at each other yet, so we figured let's get the recording on before it comes to virtual fisticuffs. But yes, Data Center Therapy, a podcast by Ivoxy Consulting, if you're not all familiar.
Is that who we are now?
We are, yeah. Thank you for joining us. Yeah. So what are we talking about today? We've really been leaning in on the security recently, and that's been great.
Are we going to bring some of that security stuff home?
Well, yeah, or, I may have done a cardinal sin. I don't know if it's a cardinal sin, but I kind of shortcut and said, you know what, not worth the trouble kind of thing so far.
Yeah.
And I did a not best practice thing. Then again, I did a mainstream thing, something that mom and dad would do without second thought or hesitation.
True that.
Doesn't make it bad, but I'm not proud of it. I'll say that. I'm not proud.
You know better, so it makes you feel funny, right?
Well, exactly. Yeah. 1,000%. And this is Data Center Therapy, so consider me on the couch this episode. I'm really have to confess some sins here. It's kind of a confession/therapy.
What'd you do, Yeti?
Episode. Well, okay. I don't think we talked about it on the last episode, but I bought a robot vacuum.
Uh-oh.
This has a little context. I think, 15, 16 years ago, I bought a Roomba off Woot.com, now owned by Amazon, but back when Woot was a cool thing.
I remember that.
Bought a Roomba. And this was, robot vacuums were new at this point. And with everything, right, that have been around for 10 or 20 years, the iterations that we have now are a long shot from where they started.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember the iRobot that I had, the Roomba, yeah, I think same thing. I had a fairly thick carpet in my house in New York, and it just, after a couple times, the battery wasn't working. Couldn't get it on the base. Yeah. It was a cool little toy, but it didn't really do much. So I started looking. We have a little one on the way at the beginning of November. Yes, we'll be welcoming her. And we're looking forward to that. But it's to the point where, I'm not stupid enough to think I'm going to get all tinkery with Home Assistant and automation and think that I can make things fiddly and that's going to help us once baby's here, right? And like these things need to be locked in, bulletproof, make it easier for us. One of the things I'm doing is, you and I talked about it, the Z-Wave. I've got the little paddle switches that if we want to track baby changes and spit ups and feedings and all of this, the last thing my wife's going to want to do is pull the phone out, baby in the other arm, or me, and enter. That's not going to happen. So I'm programming buttons.
You were talking about, here's the button for the poop, here's the button for the pee, here's the button for, so it's just hit the button. When
exactly. And the point is something that works that's going to make life easier. So chores. It's not like you have to vacuum any less when you're, if anything more. We've got 2 dogs, etc. So I've been looking at vacuums, and I went with the Roborock S7.
So that's the one I've heard too. Is the
latest and greatest.
Yeah.
And I was kind of holding back too about the vacuum thing, as the mop stuff intrigued me. Because yes, vacuuming, but coffee drops or my dog's coming in from outside and a little pitter patter muddy feet.
Yeah, little footprints.
Yeah, the mop. And we have laminate flooring. It's wonderful. It's super easy to clean. It's very resilient. But it would be nice to be able to clean that. And from the reviews that I was reading, there's a guy on YouTube. His channel's called The Hookup. He's just this guy who does a great job of describing the stuff that we're into. And he reviewed it, and he said the mopping is actually really good. So I said, all right, hell, I'll go for it.
Yeah. Have you tried it yet?
Well, I have, but it's made in China. It's a Chinese company.
Well, the mopping specifically, but
the mopping I have not
you'll
tried.
Get there, but yeah,
I will. Yeah, I have not done the mopping yet.
Okay.
But the concern is, the mapping and the pall over it, the cloud that you hear, a cloud, no pun intended, is that a lot of your home data gets shipped back to China. And I just would love to avoid that at any time. So they've got this open source package called Velotudo that you can load onto the robot. But instead of being able to easily root it, now you got to take it apart and solder in wires and this and that. And I said, you know what? I want to try it with stock firmware first. But does that defeat the purpose? Now they've got everything. Doesn't matter if I jump off the cloud now. They've already got what they have.
Right.
Whatever. Now you really are leaning into, you know what? The convenience factor of it all.
Yeah.
So I feel bad about that. Tell me it's okay, Matt.
I think it is, and I think it kind of depends on where. Like it's at some point you have to say, yes, this is okay. No, this isn't. Right. So a similar one. As I moved into this house and started buying home automation smart stuff, my kind of thing that everything needed to be able to do would be able to run from the house without having to be able to connect out to anywhere else. It doesn't matter if it's China or local to the U.S. It doesn't need to phone out for anything to turn
your IoT
the dishwasher.
VLAN.
Yeah, nothing needs to go out. And I went through a similar thing, driven a little differently. The dishwasher died, insurance kicked in, and I got a brand new dishwasher. Honestly, 100% did not realize it was smart and hooked up to anything until it showed up, and I'm reading through the manual, right?
Nice.
So my Bosch dishwasher, is it Bosch? I think it's Bosch. It phones home. It's got a thing. And out of all of the things I have, and it's the one that I'm less concerned about. The third-party purchase by Toshiba air conditioner that's sitting back there, much more concerning about it phoning out because it's got some weird stuff that it does and how it works, right?
Well, I mean, so let's say it's isolated on its own VLAN. It can't get to your local stuff. Let's just assume that, which I'm struggling with also. But if it's isolated...
MDNS.
What is it? Yeah, but what is it going to tell the mothership about? What is it going to glean? So what is your dishwasher going to glean?
You mentioned that about your... I think I asked you a similar question about the vacuum, and you said my floor plan. And I'm like, but okay, the floor plan isn't as much of an issue to me as much as the fact that it's a device inside of my network that can potentially talk to all of the other devices, right? So it's not that I personally wouldn't be as concerned about it scanning the floor and knowing where my couch is as much as this device can query my phone and my desktop and my this and that and the other thing. And hey, let me connect to your printer and right, that kind of stuff is where I'm more concerned about that piece.
And so now I'm about to commit another egregious sin. So in the need to integrate with everything with Home Assistant, there is a plugin or an integration for the Xiaomi. I think that's how you pronounce it. Xiaomi, Z-X-I-A. Yeah. And the problem is, though, the client that runs that, the Home Assistant piece of it, needs to be on the same LAN as the vacuum in order to... It's a security thing from the vacuum. The network library in the vacuum requires that. It's a UDP thing.
That's dumb, but okay, sure.
It's
whatever.
Super dumb. And I figured, no problem. I'll just add another interface to my Home Assistant box on my private IoT VLAN and then firewall off what I need to firewall off, and it'll talk just fine. Nope. Blows up my entire HomeKit environment. Can't figure out why. I took out the default gateway and made it just I don't know what it is, but it just starts making HomeKit ugly. And if HomeKit blows up and my Leviton switches start blinking, for real, they start like half the house started blinking. What is going on? It kind of goes back to that when I tried to bring in that UDM Pro, the unified network device
thing, the firewall
half
thing.
My house started blowing up. So it's similar to that, and I'm like, I don't know. And I know a lot about networking. I certainly know a lot about home networking, right? I can manage what's going on here. And that was baffling. And it's tough because you put yourself in a situation where things have been dialed in for 2-3 years solidly. And then you get the frustrated, like, man, it's one of those things that once I scratch my tinker itch and I get it working, now that's table stakes. That stuff works, and it better work with minimum maintenance. And if you blow that up, the level of stress and anxiety, whoa, now all of a sudden, I don't want to tear it down and start over. That's a nightmare. Yeah, it was a little stressful. So I ended up putting the robot on.
Oh, so now it's
wireless
not separated. That's sad.
It's not separated.
So maybe that's why you're going to go hack it and install your custom firmware so you can have layer 3 routed connectivity to your
It might end up being
firmware
that might end up being the thing. That being said, the app and the quality of life, I like it.
Yeah.
I didn't know it. So you start it running, and you just take your phone out and you're watching it, basically the LiDAR or whatever the hell it's doing. And you're seeing it draw You're seeing it draw a top-down floor plan.
Yeah.
And then when
That's
you're
cool.
done, you take and you can draw lines to basically separate rooms.
Yeah.
And then they go into different colors. And now you've identified. You could say go vacuum the family room, and it goes and does it.
Okay.
And that's neat. And I bought the base, the auto empty base.
Yeah.
So it's very quiet. Even when it knows when it's on carpet, and then it turns up the suction. It's really neat. But then it goes home, goes base, and it will auto empty into this little bag up top, and that's when it sounds like a vacuum. Like,
yeah, but that only runs for a couple of seconds or something, right?
it does. It does. And you can set a do not disturb. So if you have it running at night and it goes back to the base, it doesn't kick on at 1 a.m. and wake everyone up.
There you go.
So it's got that too. It's neat. We're going to be doing the mopping soon.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah. Let me know how that goes,
again,
because I'm interested in that. We got all hardwood floors here too.
Well, we did steam. We've got one of those sharks.
Yeah.
The really great steam cleaner, and that does a great job with the floors. Do that first. This is not meant to be my house is filthy, let me just send the robot around.
No, but you can clean them. It's the more frequently you do it, the less of an issue it is, right?
And the mean time between manual vacuums or moppings stretches out big time if you're using this in between. So, but the vacuum thing so far, I love it. Actually, it really seems to work well. It looks like it's got a battery life that's going to exceed 2 hours if it needed to run. The mapping is very intensive.
There you go.
He's busy and deliberate when it's mapping. But we heard it kick off. I had it scheduled for a scheduled cleaning last night. And when we first ran it, we closed the nursery room. We closed the guest bathroom. Well, the guest bathroom was open. I didn't think it was going to try it. It tried it.
It did?
I've got a little bit of a lip to get into that room. Like, it won't get in there anyway. It got in there. It's banging around. Boop, 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 boop. We could hear it through the walls. Boop, 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 boop. So, we might have to tweak the automatic vacuuming. I thought I'd play with it, and then it opened our bedroom door. I'm like, oh, the hell with this thing, and I just sent it back to base and went to bed.
There you go.
But yeah, such is technology.
I don't know. So along with keeping everything running into the house, there's a balance between let me get this thing to automatically do this stuff and let me just do it myself. And honestly, I think one of the vacuums is one of the ones I want, but I don't know. It's that trade-off. My roommate had a big thing with the coffee pot and wanting it to be automatically running in the morning, and to me, it just feels like shuffling the work around. You still have to empty the trash. You still have to empty the vacuum bin. You still have to clean it. You still have to refill the soap. You still have to change the coffee in the coffee maker. You still have to do all of those things. It's just shuffling around and adding another component to getting that done. So I guess my overall question is it worth it? Is it really worth it?
This would not have been worth it, because I completely agree with that sentiment. This would not have been worth it without the auto empty base.
Yeah.
Because if I have to pull that tray out every time it vacuums, I mean, yes, that's less work than vacuuming, but it's still, you're right. It takes away some of the magic, the automation of it, if I have to babysit it all the time. Now, from a mop standpoint, yeah, but you're not mopping every single day.
True.
So you fill the tank up with water, you put the tank back in, and that's it. And you do that, once a week?
Yeah.
That's okay. I'm okay with that.
I guess the extreme that I envision, and I think it was because I saw it. I was working with a customer, actually, and we're at a bank in a Safeway. And so they roll the chain link fence open in the bank, and everyone's getting started, and we're doing some work in the morning. And it was the conversation went something like, hey, Susie, go start the vacuum. Go start Frank the vacuum or whatever. And now Susie's job for the next 45 minutes, 30 minutes or whatever is to watch Frank and make sure he doesn't run away. So standing there, just watching the vacuum.
Wait, they had a robot vacuum at the bank in the Safeway?
Yeah.
That's cool.
And well, right. You think so. And then now instead of saying, hey, can you go sweep, can you go vacuum, it's, hey, can you go monitor the vacuum to make sure it does a thing. And that
They had to worry about it running away?
well, yeah, because you open the gate and it can run off into the meat department and
But
say,
you're supposed to be able to draw boundaries, so they need to create a virtual wall.
sure.
But what you're saying is hysterical, right? How ridiculous.
Right. That's the thing that I struggle with some of these things. Is like, you know what? I can go flip a light switch. I think is the one that I don't know. That one's because of the motion. That one makes a bit of a difference, but it's that kind of concept. Like, is it really that hard to do? Are we really making our lives that much easier?
See, I like the routines. The wake up in the morning, go to bed, all your lights turn down. You don't have to worry that I missed that one in the family room. Like, that's nice. I don't like voice activation. I will use it sometimes, but I don't like it. It's more opportunity to get frustrated when it doesn't understand me the first time. Then it's like, this is stupid. This is not easier.
Right.
It screams in my face. You have not made things easier when it fails like that. So
the one I like, the one automation we use is good night, trigger word, and then good night.
Oh yeah.
And I've got the one puck, which I'm not super stoked on, living in the living room. And if it hears me, it triggers okay. If my phone hears me, it says, okay, cool, I heard you. Can you unlock your phone so I can do this? I'm like,
Yeah.
But
that's not unique to the Google ecosystem either. If I'm looking at my iPhone and I say something like that, and I've got all my HomePods around me, they ignore me. The phone. And yeah, to your point, the vocal acknowledgement drives me batty. That's why I've got the button on the side of the bed. It used to be, hey, trigger, good night. And good night! Might as well scream at me like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Listen, I do a lot of programming too. I can figure out that maybe I should not scream back at if I hear these keywords.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
my goodness.
So I've got one fun automation I got set up. The dogs will get me up in the middle of the night, and one of the things I hate is the lights turning on. Because I want it to be dark, I can see in the dark, I'm already adjusted to the dark, keep it dark while I put the dogs out. Bedtime is flexible. Morning time is flexible-ish. So how do I make it okay that I get up to let the dogs out, but also have it trigger and turn on when everyone starts moving? So I came up with this idea. I've got all of my motion sensors plugged into a counter effectively, and then I've got a global variable where if I detect motion, it increments +1. If I detect motion, it increments +1. So as you start moving around the house, it goes 1, 2, 3, 40, 50, 60, 80. So once I hit a threshold, there's been enough movement in the house that we're up. Obviously, the day's started. And then the same thing, once it gets up, it starts counting down, and you're just constantly fighting that countdown, that constant countdown. So after it hits beneath a certain threshold, and it stays beneath a certain threshold for X amount of time, now obviously the house is settled down, no one's moving around. And
do you find that actually works in practice? Because it seems to me like you could both just sleep well through the night, get up like a shot, and then go out there, and it's the number's too low at that point, but you're clearly up.
Right. So it takes a minute, and it's the difference between I walk from the bedroom to the back door with a stop in the kitchen to get a glass of water and then back to the bedroom, right? That's about 12 on my metric.
You could also add things like, if my computer turns on, increase the value by 40. Oh, look at this. It's like you're almost like a Bayesian score kind of thing. That, of course, you take the nerdiest path. I guess I shouldn't have expected anything different.
I mean, just sitting here in the sense that we've been talking, this morning we got up above whatever, and since we've been sitting here, 28 down to 22, and my metric is 12. So it doesn't take a lot to get above that, but...
Does your girlfriend get tired of you explaining this to her with a whiteboard?
No.
Because I know you do.
No.
Come here for a second. Let me go to the... No, I'm not looking at the whiteboard again.
So that's the one. I still find myself, while I was getting it dialed in, I still find myself going over sometimes and pulling the little manual power off button on the switch, because something got screwed up and the mudroom... Oh,
the little paddle thing?
The mudroom lights turned on at 1 a.m. when I'm letting the dog out, and I'm like, yeah. Off. Just stay off. You're done.
Well, speaking of the reset of the switches, those Levitons, which a lot of people have said there's issues with, for me, I had some disconnecting issues when I first bought it, but a firmware update, believe it or not, from a power company, actually fixed all my problems. They're stable.
Yeah.
Until I messed with the gateway device with a Unify upgrade attempt, and then this last week. And here's the weirdest thing. Always, you just hold the paddle for like 15 seconds. The light goes orange, red, orange, red, orange, red. You let go, and then it's fast green. And at that point, it says, "I'm new. Pair me." You go to HomeKit. Well, first I switch to my desired IoT network, right? Then you go to the Home app. You say add accessory, and it sees it. You put your code in. It acquires it says, "Do you allow this to connect to your wireless network? Whatever's on your phone." Yes. Go, 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 go. That wasn't working. Like I was resetting. And here's the thing, right? When you're troubleshooting, you try to sift out the good data from the bad, potentially misleading data.
Yep.
So how about this? A couple of days in the time frame that all this started going down, we had a little power blip. So now I'm thinking, are these things corrupt? Did they get corrupt? I'm looking at my Home Assistant log, and I see some zero conf, which is MDNS, packets coming through with jumbled characters, bad characters. Well, my switches must be corrupt. That was where I was operating, right?
Yeah.
So I bought a couple new, or no, I bought a couple switches anyway, but I had a spare dimmer switch in my drawer. So I went through the pain in the ass
Throw one of those in.
Shutting the freaking circuit off, because I'm not an electrician. I will not work when it's hot. Taking the switch out, struggling to get the wires, and I replace the dimmer. Same thing. Now I'm like, I am screwed. I have no idea what's going on. Maybe these switches aren't bad, this and that. Well, having that second interface on Home Assistant was gumming up that setup process. It wasn't allowing it to complete. I mean, it's the weirdest thing. Usually you hope for a hard fail, right? You hope for the hard fail. It was just kind of sitting there, and my phone was never giving up trying through the Home app. It was really one of the weirdest things. But the good news is it's no failed switches. But that was, once I shut that interface off, setup process completed just fine.
Well, there you go. So that you got to touch, was that your first big intro into multicast DNS? And
not at all.
And no, it wasn't?
No, not at all. No, I've been playing around with that for a while, and it's called Zero Conf. It's called Bonjour. And now MDNS is really kind of what it is. But no, I've been doing that for a while, Matt. But it's one of those things that when you try to look up, and we've been talking about this, is the daemon that comes on almost every Linux machine pre-installed is called Avahi. And by default, that thing does it repeat by default, or does it? The daemon itself is an MDNS.
I don't know what Avahi does specifically.
It is an MDNS client. It can hear MDNS. Well, but anything can, right? Mostly anything can.
Well,
so it allows the machine to receive those requests and listen and store the address in its own basically routing table, for lack of a better term. Any service can chat on that. That doesn't rely on Avahi. But you look online, you start to research, and the config file has a lot of entries that you can touch and tweak with. And I haven't been able to find a great, outside of here's the man page, have fun.
Right.
Anything about it. It seems to be it's taken for granted. People are just like, run it or don't run it. Okay.
The one I find the most amusing with documentation on stuff, and we talked about this a bit, was I find this with man pages too, is to set this setting, set the setting. Which is not at all.
Yeah, I got the
useful.
Syntax. Thanks.
Right. What's it do? So I went down the path with most of my kit in the house is don't tell Cisco. eBay special, right? So it's some 3750s. It's a firewall.
Is it counterfeit gear, Matt? Let me call back to about 4 episodes ago.
I don't believe so, but it fits in my price range, and it gives me some of the features I'm looking for. And one of the things that I find is interesting is multicast DNS. What's the other one? uPnP is absolutely geared towards consumer. You've got your Netgear whatever from Best Buy running your firewall. What's a VLAN? I have no idea. Let me just run this thing and everything works. Is what it's geared towards, and we're seeing that in corporate. We're seeing that in the real IT infrastructure. You've got people that are like, well, let me just get some AirPlay devices or some Chromecasts and put those on some TVs and we'll do a thing. And so I'm seeing that Cisco is building that functionality into the core routing and the core devices. I can stand up a multicast environment and make sure that that's bulletproof because it's actual network stuff that I care about. I've got knobs and dials on the switches to rebroadcast and retransmit my multicast DNS, which is only supposed to be on a single VLAN, built into this corporate. There's a better word than corporate. There's home use. There's
enterprise
grade gear that actually has the knobs and dials to be able to do this. And I think that's kind of neat and unfortunate that it's not designed in such a way to be scalable and work across the corp. It's
weird. It's weird because it's becoming, we talked about this, it's critical. It's becoming critical. It's a service that is assumed to be there, it's assumed to work. And at the same time, the very nature, the very design of the protocol is kind of blast and hope you're listening. So what is there to tweak outside of allowing it, repeating it, or denying it?
Right, like you said, it's designed to just blast and exist, and the protocol isn't the quote right protocol to be using for something like this. So Cisco has to go and build this Band-Aid solution into their software to support this thing that it's a strange one that way.
uPnP is disabled on your network, right?
My firewall does not support uPnP.
Perfect. Mine does, turned off. Yeah. It's anybody out there who's got a home network, uPnP, that is what basically allows services inside your network to turn up NAT, the turn up port translation inbound. They can even tell your router basically to open this port on the outside to me. That's horrific. And you know, if you need to have stuff accessible from the outside, you stand that up and ideally push it to a reverse proxy that then handles something like that, at the edge. My Xbox is the one that complains about it the most. But man, I remember that when I bought the Xbox One and people would the 360 was a nightmare. They were, not
even then,
great.
I'll get maybe a disconnect or a hey, I can't connect error message, and I just try it again and it figures itself out. So
right, which I don't like. Give me a fail, give me a hard fail, give me a hard win. That kind of might work. Just try it again.
Well, I guess to me it seems like, let me try uPnP. That broke horrifically. Okay, so I'm going to do this other connection method then, right? That's what it seems like. So. Yep. Whatever.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's. I know we talk about home automation a lot, but it is kind of the hobbyist part of what we do. At least the mainstream part of where a lot of my hobby in IT and what I like to goes into after the clock gets punched, so to speak, and we go home. And that, my poor wife, it's just, I just want it to work for her and for us, and it's, But I'm happy to. I don't know why that happened with the second interface on Home Assistant. I even I shut Avahi off, so that's why I was like, it's not like DNS in terms of the Avahi daemon on Home Assistant because I turned that off. I mean, that shouldn't affect.
All of your stuff is HomeKit, right? Your Apple HomeKit ecosystem. That's your.
Yes, but remember, yes, but I use the HomeKit controller on Home Assistant to tie in my HomeKit physical devices, my Wi-Fi switches that do HomeKit.
Okay,
they
so
don't
rather
go directly.
Than the iPad or whatever it is, it's connecting to the. Isn't that how it has to work? Or how it's supposed to work?
It is, and as far as the iPad knows, it's all good. It says they're not HomeKit certified, even though the devices actually are, but because they bridge through. All those devices are tied to Home Assistant as the bridge, and then basically Home Assistant turns around and says, "I'm a bridge. Here you go, HomePod, iPad, whatever, Apple TV," and then Apple TV says, "Oh, okay, there's a home," and so it all works that way. So if Home Assistant was to go down, let's put it that way, then those devices that pair with Home Assistant are unavailable to HomeKit, even if they're upline on a network.
All right. So you went that way with it, and you're running into those Avahi, those multicast DNS weirdness. So I was going to say, hey, listeners, do you have any info there?
Yeah, and I would say what's weird is this was not a failure of HomeKit specifically because even the connection between the device, the switch, and Home Assistant, the entities went gray, unavailable. So it wasn't I can't relay it out. HomeKit's all confused. Forget HomeKit. Even Home Assistant couldn't see it.
Right.
And that is the, device goes unavailable. And it's just baffling to me. I thought for a second at Eureka, because I first just added the second network and I let it DHCP. Whatever, great. Just get on that network, right? Now you got a layer 2 adjacent segment. Well, of course, DHCP is going to hand out a default gateway. Well, now I've got asymmetrical routing probably going on like crazy there. Let me pull that gateway off. Okay, I'm going to look at my routing table. Yep, I've only got one default gateway. It's on my other LAN. I'm good. And then, of course, one of those things where you test and right away it doesn't prop up. But after a minute or two, and we're all very patient in this industry, right?
So, that is the one I find myself working on a whole lot more often is, okay, I need to go get a cup of coffee while I let this sit for a second.
Yeah, not control seeing out of everything after 3 seconds. So I thought I had it licked, but it's just one of those things that, you know what, I'll take the not best practice deployment workaround for a minute until I've at least settled back and I can. Now I've got my arms around, at least I know fail cases. I know a known working config. So at least if I decide to play with it, I can take those 3 steps back and get back to working without too much, consternation. That is important to me too. It keeps me away from you should have just left it alone, Matt. Keeps me away from those situations because that is a conversation I have with myself a lot.
Once I got all of my stuff dialed in, I absolutely went through and, okay, here, everything's working. Good backup. Check it all into my Git repo. Yeah, there you go.
I'm showing Matt on camera right now a printout that's called HomeKit Home Assistant Stuff. And it is basically a list of all of my HomeKit devices and their 8-digit HomeKit codes.
There you go.
And their last 6 octet of the Mac address, because that is how it gets identified. Like it's Leviton switch 055 CFB. And so now when I'm inevitably reprogramming and I've thrown out the stickers, all of the switches have the number on it, but you got to take the faceplate off the gang box to get them. So I'm not doing that.
No running.
So this way, and then I've got the process to add them to HomeKit, to Home Assistant, because what you have to do is add it with your phone. That's direct to Apple. Update the firmware if it needs to, then remove it from HomeKit. Now go to Home Assistant, it sees the device, add it, put the code in again, and then turn around and configure it out to broadcast the HomeKit from there. So it's like a 6-step process per device.
That's complicated, man.
It's,
Here, let me run you through. I want to put a new switch in on mine with my Lutron, with my Lutron cassette stuff.
What is Casita? What's the backing tech?
So
Bluetooth,
there's
Z-Wave, Wi-Fi.
Neither. It's whatever Lutron is using. It's a totally separate wireless.
Lutron, it's proprietary, so you need a hub.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
it's not Zigbee or Z-Wave?
I don't think so. It could be, but I don't think so. I go wire up a switch, and then I go open my app, and I say add a device, and then I hold my power off button on the device, and it pairs, and I tell it what it is and who it is and where it is. And then I go find it because it magically showed up in Home Assistant and say, you're now this and you live in this area. And
similar if I added a Hue bulb, because I've added the Hue hub to my Home Assistant integration. So that's that. For the bad side is the firmware app, the Leviton app. It has to be talking directly to HomeKit to be able to update the firmware.
Yeah.
So I can't do that whole thing. Home Assistant has revved and developed. You've seen it rapidly. They're doing a great stuff. But right now, if I need to update a firmware switch, I need to basically drop it, re-add it to the phone, and add it that way. Because otherwise, the Leviton app doesn't see those. It doesn't see the devices in the Leviton app when they're added via Home Assistant for whatever reason.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, luckily, firmware on a light switch.
There's not a lot going on there.
Basically, it works or it doesn't. So once it works, don't touch it.
Yeah.
Unless there's some weird time bug in there, you're hoping there's not a lot going on.
Yeah.
So that hasn't been a pain point for the most part. If I need to pull it out for a reason, something else has gone wrong, unrelated to that, and it's just, I got to remember to do firmware when I bring it back in the first place. It's not a big deal. I don't find it to be a hardship, again, once you set it and hopefully forget it, right?
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. I think I'm going to let you have the rest of your day back if you're cool with that.
Sounds like a plan.
Thanks, everyone, for listening, for letting us kind of just chat and ruminate and grouse about the things that take this quote-unquote relaxing at home time and how we can make it so
Z-Wave or
unrelaxing.
Wi-Fi? That's the big question.
Right? Yes. So if anybody has any thoughts on the Home Assistant, please drop us a line. We're on LinkedIn. I'm not on Facebook anymore, so I don't know if we are.
Ooh, high five.
Yep, high five on that. I deleted it. So I'm not on Facebook or the Twitter, but I know Ivoxy is on the Twitter at least and LinkedIn. So follow us there. And we are at podcast@ivoxy.com. Is probably the best way to reach us if you got anything you want to talk about.
Absolutely.
If you got questions, things you want to hear, feel free to shoot us a line. For Matt, I am Matt. Thanks for listening to yet another episode of Data Center Therapy. Have a great day, y'all.